welcome to the Queens Connexus podcast. If you're watching, if you're listening, we're grateful that you have tuned in with us today. Queens Connexus, we're a fellowship of ministry leaders who are collaborating together for the sake of seeing God's kingdom grow here in Queens. Today we have with us talking Lester and Dave and myself. I'm Jonathan. How's it going, fellas?
Good. Awesome. Glad to be here.
Good. Hey, today's topic is we are talking about what is Queens Connexus, how Queens Connexus got started. I'm so grateful to be a part of Queens Connexus, but I was not here at the genesis of Queens Connexus, but you two were. So first of all, thank you for Queens Connexus, for what it has meant in my life, and I know for other ministry leaders. But for the sake of just kind of getting our conversation started, how did Queens Connexus come about? You two started Queens Connexus, yes?
That's right.
Tell me a little bit about that journey.
Well, Lester and I, we planted the Elm Church together about 5 years ago.
Okay.
And we always wanted to plant more churches in Queens. Well, for us, mainly in Elmhurst. And we were getting ready to begin preparing for a second church plant. And one of the things that we realized was we needed more community for all of the church planters we hoped to have. And so it was just a question of how do we support thriving church plants, thriving church planters, and one of the things that we needed was this community. But obviously, everyone and their moms has talked about how there's an important need for community with church planting. But what we found out there was a lot of like networks where people had to show up with like a gigantic stat sheet. It's who you know, and a lot of great people were really just flying under the radar, unseen, and there was a lot of narcissism as well in that space, the church planting industrial complex, let's call it that, it really does grind people down. And so there was no place for healthy leadership where people can just show up in the middle of transition, in the wilderness, in the valley, be seen, be loved, be cared for. And we thought, you know what, let's not do the network, let's do the fellowship. And let's be a fellowship that functions like a network. It has resources like a network, but at the core of it, it will be friendship.
So quickly, you made a distinction between network and a fellowship. In 30 seconds, unpack that. Like, what's different between a network and fellowship? Is it just a language because we're trying to be something different? By not saying network, when we're saying we're a fellowship, what's the difference?
Yeah, I think in my mind, a network is where you show up and you're kind of like trying to connect with people, but you're telling them, connect with me because I have this or I've done this, and you're really presenting your stats.
Yeah.
But a fellowship is, I am someone who's following the Lord. Here's what he's doing in my life. And it's just friendship. It's just friendship. And you can show up as you are, looking for community, looking for friendship. May not have anything to show for it in that season, but that's okay. Like, we will make time for you.
Gotcha. Lester, what was your initial kind of ideas and thoughts behind the need for Queens Connexus?
I think, obviously, I'm not very good with strategy, so I think when we're talking about this, I was just like, I just want people to get together and talk about their complaints and what's so frustrating about their like experiences at church and how do we undo that. And of course, Dave is much better. Okay, and then like a week later, he was like, I have this presentation that I need you to look at. And we're in his living room, and he had like this slide thing going on, and it was like, like interdenominational, like one slide, and then like relational, and then another slide was like resourcing, and I was like, wow, that's like really cool. And the basis of everything was relationships, because you're right. I think, Dave, when you just said like people come to these networks with what they need to show off for, you're almost attracting those who are, and not all, right, but those who are more insecure. When you're looking at secure people, that is not their cup of tea, right? And I'm generalizing right now, obviously, but a secure person does not need to show off. They don't need to tell you what they've done. They're actually the ones who fly under the radar, So you're almost creating this place, this platform for insecure, and I want to say insecure men that potentially can gain power by having a church. And you're like, whoa, danger. And we fell under that. Actually, we all did. We've all fall under very toxic church leaders. Yeah. Of course, not everyone, but a lot of our cases are like that. So I think coming from that mindset, really, we need to undo that. And create something a little bit different. Obviously, I'm sure years down the line, we're going to have our own issues, but at least tackling and being very honest that, we have crap to deal with. And if we don't deal with it now, it's just seeping into the churches that we plant. So how do we start with good resources? How do we start with relationships that are deeper than just networking? Because that really does, create a platform for safer environments where I personally can join and be like, okay, I'm not going to be attacked.
Yeah, which is we talk about this a lot at Queens Connexus. One of our desires is we want to have those healthy relationships. We want to foster healthy leaders, and I know we'll spend a lot of time in future episodes talking about narcissism and things like that. But I think another one of the aspects of what's so important about Queens Connexus, and I've caught from the vision from you guys as it relates from relationships to network, is networks can be very transactional. Yeah. Here's what I'm bringing to the table. Here's what you can give me in return, and we partner together. And I think there's a beauty in partnership and collaboration, but one of the things we emphasize is we like to see that as the fruit that comes out of the rootedness of our relationships. It's not the reason why we're together. We're together for the sake of relationships. And so I think one of the differences that you guys have taught me and Queens Connexus has taught me about the difference between a network and what we do as a fellowship is we're first and foremost relationships for the sake of the relationships, safe places for us to learn, grow, speak the gospel into one another's lives and learn from that. And then because we're passionate about the same things, then of course we are going to partner and collaborate together. But the network aspect is a secondary result because of those healthy relationships. And at least I know in my life that's been personally a part that's been helpful. But you mentioned, go ahead.
I was just thinking about, I hope he doesn't mind me dropping his name, David Bisgrove at Redeemer. I've only met him once in person, but it was a season of transition for me where I was leaving one type of ministry for another, and I was definitely in the wilderness, confused about my next steps. Had no ministry that I could leverage. In terms of being transactional, I had nothing to transact with, and the people that I was reaching out to for some guidance, it just felt like they were canceling on me left and right. No one had time for me, and these are people that I had hoped to turn to in my time of need, and it just kind of went away. But he was this guy who doesn't know me. I'm not part of his church. He's really busy, and he made time for me.
Wow. And
when I sat with him, I could see that he had gone over just what I've written to him, and he was prepared. And that really encouraged me to keep looking. And I think as I reflected on that interaction in the years that followed, something that dawned on me was if there are people that I have to win over to give me time to want to walk with me, then I'm going to be afraid of losing that when I go back into a valley or back into the wilderness. And those are not people that I'm going to count on.
Yeah.
And so to have a fellowship where I never had to show up with with the ability to transact, to get something, to be seen and cared for, to have that kind of fellowship, that would mean that when I venture into something as vulnerable as church planting, if I'm thinking about church planting or I'm thinking about starting something new that God has put on my heart, I'm not going to be afraid of losing that community because I never had to leverage anything to begin with.
Yes, good.
I can count on that community being there for me because they never wanted anything from me in the first place.
Yeah. Yeah, and at the root of this, as you're just saying that, man, I'm just meditating on the truth of the gospel and Jesus, that it is precisely that I've done nothing to earn this.
Yeah.
That gives me the assurance and the confidence there's nothing I can do to lose that goodness. And what you're describing is true in our relationships. And you mentioned that guy from City to City, and as you're saying that, I immediately think of
Redeemer.
Redeemer. Forgive me. Aren't they one and the same? No? But as you're saying that, I'm immediately going, man. I hope you two don't mind me name dropping you guys, but you guys have been that a lot in my life, and so I'm just grateful for that, of knowing that, hey, you guys met me in a season and have become friends, and I'm grateful for that. And so friendships that look like the gospel. I guess if there was immediate takeaway from who we are in Queens Connexus in relation to, maybe any other type of pastors gathering, is we want to say that is we just care about you and relationships, and you guys have modeled that to me, and it helped save my ministry in New York City. So thank you for that. So continuing on a little bit, thinking about values. We've talked about relationships. Our three values we say are relational training, cross-pollinating, and resources. Talk to me a little bit about that. Why those values? What stands out and about those values?
Well, for relational training, I think that all of us want to cultivate a learning culture around us. We should all be looking for training, I think, always improving ourselves. But there was something about training that was so impersonal, where they wouldn't meet us where we were. It was a lot of like talking to us as if we were like a cookie cutter people. And so we needed relational training that would first listen to where we are, what we're going through, really step into our shoes and then say, okay, based on where you're coming from, your gifts, the things you carry, these are the areas in which, maybe we can grow together. Mm-hmm. And so there was definitely a sense of, being seen and known. And then from that place, being lifted, Otherwise, it's almost like they're saying, hey, come eat at this table, but, the table is a mile in the sky and I've got nothing to reach it.
Yeah. I mean, to give a quick illustration, think about, I've got 3 kids, and all of my kids have different personalities and learn in different ways. And so when we talk about relational training, it's similar to how I parent my kids different in some ways, not different with different standards, but recognizing, hey, my oldest responds in this way, this one responds in this way. And so I discipline them differently based off where they are and what they need. And similar, relational training allows us to contextualize and personalize some of those trainings. Absolutely. And so it's just an illustration I think of that helps me think through if training and even discipleship, spiritual parenting, it's recognizing that there's individual needs and everybody's in an individual place and be able to come and meet them there and then foster growth from that standpoint.
And even more basically, it's the question of can you disciple someone without love? If the answer to that is no, then why is love so absent in a lot of our training? Love that sees a person and really wants to know the person before you really elevate the person. And so relational training is basically just saying training that is loving of that person, to be more focused on where that individual is, to know them and to lift them. Yeah. And so, I would say all of that, especially in a place like Queens, Yeah.
I was just going to go into that because I feel like relational in Queens is it's like a different child. You just have to, I feel like we're not understood because Queens is such a immigrant heavy borough. Not that there's no other immigrants in other boroughs, but this is where we are known as a melting pot. Like even just within this 1 mile radius of where we're sitting now, our local hospital, which is only a few blocks away, has like over 100 dialects, like languages. Wow. And you're going, wow, like what's happening here? And I feel like when I go to other types of training, it is for a cookie. You said this, like a cookie cutter type of person. I am not that person. I came from abusive family households. I came from a lot of shame culture. I came from a lot of, we both did. Like this is just our story. It's very normal. So if let's say I go into a training on how to love the neighborhood elsewhere, it's like, well, make sure that this is like your mission ground and that you have this discipleship ready. And already those 2 words I'm allergic to. You tell me that I have to treat people like discipleship or mission. I'm going, this reminds me of my family. Like you're actually saying things to me that I hate. What does that remind me of? Possibly my parents leaving me, because once you're done discipling me, you're leaving me. I'm now your mission. I'm your project. I'm not a relationship to you. So even using like words like that to me is ignorant because you're not understanding that this borough is made up of people like us.
Yeah.
We're not from another very secure state or secure family even. We're from broken families. I don't know if people know about ACEs, but like adverse childhood experiences, like that's something I love talking about just because it's 10 simple questions, but it really gives a big background on I'm coming from a background of abusive family households, right? So when you use certain words with me, I'm already like hesitant. And not only that, but if I don't deal with that and you don't help me deal with that and I don't know about it, I could potentially be a very toxic leader. And you didn't know that because you don't understand this borough, which is why we have Queens Connexus.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm so glad you said that. That's absolutely true.
Yeah. Which some of our resources, to talk about that for a second, tie into some of these things.
Yeah.
And so talk to me about some of the resources we offer. How have we provided those in the past, even up to now? And then potentially, how are we looking to that in the future? So heartbeat behind some of the resources that we offer.
Yeah. So I feel like we just touched upon relational training. Second one would be resourcing, right? So how do we then look at someone? If I look at myself and I go, how do I learn? How do I undo certain things that I didn't even know were problems to me? And again, I only know that it's a problem when I look at someone who is secure. And I go, oh, like they responded so different to conflict. Why? Why are they not triggered? Why don't they want revenge? And I'm like, oh, it's because they're very secure. They're not being defined by their failure. Whereas I'm like, you just shamed me in public. I must now shame you back, like, and then imagine that in a church setting. It's so toxic, so dangerous. So then I'm going, okay, how come we don't have resources here? Again, I have to go eat at your table in the city, Manhattan, or I have to go to Long Island. And I'm like, this is so different because, again, your setting is so different. It's a very, again, generalizing, loving family, secure background, right? And I'm going, I'm not from that background. So I almost need something that's catered to this neighborhood. So what do I need? I actually need someone to help counsel me, like mental health. What's happening with like Mars Hills, all these different things that's happening with all these toxic leaders, narcissism. I'm going, actually, I'm a potential for that. You just don't know it because you didn't give me that table yet, right? But now I have people like Redeemer Counseling Services, right? They're able to come in and be like, oh, you should go through these, the SOSR and your gift model, and which we'll talk about with Judy Chong in another episode. But that
which
kind of stuff,
we give scholarships to RCS. That's
right.
Part of our resources.
Yeah, because we really value that.
Yeah.
Again, if we understand our neighborhood is going to have possibly a high ACE score, which means you have a lot of trauma that you're working with. I'm dealing with an outdated childhood self, and I'm going to implement that in my leadership because now you give me power. Man, that's dangerous. So what do I need? I do need something like counseling. I do need someone to help me with that. What else? Acting alone. I don't know why a lot of pastors are always working alone. It's sad. But when I go to my companies and my other professions, like, well, they work in teams. But somehow this is not encouraged here. So when a church planter comes out, they're on their own. And then now imagine they have toxic characteristics.
Yeah.
Trauma, and now they're on their own. No one's really helping them. Well, that sucks. So how do we help the people around them build a core team so that this pastor is not alone? And that's what we did a lot with our cohorts, right? We did a cohort where the summertime was just for the pastors, and this was a lot on mental health. This was literally like RCS came in with a lot of counselors and sat down with all of our church. We had like 40 people there, which was great in Queens. I feel like people are thinking churches are dying. It's true. But to have 40 different types of church planters in a room was amazing in Queens.
Yeah, amazing.
So then we're like, we must, like, if I was Satan, I would go right to these 40 pastors and work with their traumas. So I'm like, we should cut them off right there. Let's bring in counselors, let's bring up these things and kind of like show them what's potential in these issues. Be more alert to them, and this way work with it. Will you be perfect? No, because we're still sinners. So we had that going on. Then we're like, okay, you're still gonna work alone. So let's do a fall cohort on all your leaders. Let's teach them also. Your pastors can't hold everything.
Right.
Your pastors most likely have a family and children. So how do you now make sure that what does Satan do? Finances, not enough money for these pastors because they're church planters. So now they're stressed, and then they're going to go home and they're going to be upset at their spouses, and it's going to be taken on their kids. So lessen that. Make sure that your leaders understand your pastors should be paid at average wage. If they have a master's degree and they've been working for 10 years, my employees at my other companies are well over 6 digits. Why am I hearing in an immigrant church it's like $30,000 because they're treasures in heaven? Granted, there are churches that can't afford money, right?
Those people who say that, they don't put their treasures.
Yeah, no, exactly.
in heaven. They put them in their bank account.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And it's frustrating, So
just my opinion.
Absolutely very frustrating. So then you're like, how do we then take your leaders and bring this up to you? Because you're the one that needs to advocate for your pastors.
Right.
You need to protect their families.
It's hard to advocate for yourself in those settings.
Yeah, I can't imagine a pastor going, I need to be paid more.
Yeah.
Yes, there are really toxic pastors that do that, but a good pastor, I'm talking about a good pastor, keep them, right? My companies, if I know that I have a good staff, I'm doing whatever I can to keep them. That's my job, right? My job is to recognize the gift and go, I need to keep you. Church, if you see a good pastor and you really see that they're really pouring into your church and your neighborhood, keep them. What does that mean? How much are they getting paid? Are there spouses working for free in the church as well? Like, are you expecting them to play the piano, in addition to what they do, Or even another one would be you yourselves learn how to counsel as well. Like counseling is not, I'm sorry, pastors are not meant to counsel. I think sometimes you're good at it, and you as in general, but when someone comes to a pastor and goes, my pet just passed away, I hear often, let's pray about it. No, that sucks, but it's because they weren't really taught, how do I do validating? How do I understand what's the meaning behind that? What are they really losing? So teach the pastors and their lay leaders, so this way it's not just one person with a church of 60 to 100. If you train 10 people, that's actually 10 people that now can alleviate the pressure that goes directly to the pastor. So things like that, I think is really important that we continue resourcing, even how to teach the Bible. I mean, why is your pastor the only one? You should learn how to teach the Bible too. Go to seminary, go learn a certification programs. There are things that will teach you how to read Psalms. Or we've done that with RTS.
Yep.
Reformed Theological Seminary.
We have
with Jim
scholarships
Harvey.
from Queens Connexus into RTS as well.
Right, and we value that. That's why, and we also know that money is hard to come by for these occupations as pastors, right? So then we go, Queens Connexus, what can we do to cut Satan off right at where he's headed? Let's provide these resources, provide the scholarships, send to seminary, teach them how to counsel, talk to them about, if you were a pastor, how much do you think you should be paid after you went to a master's degree? Let's get real. Sorry, I'm venting and I'm getting louder and louder, but
no, as a pastor here in the city, man, I'm just grateful to hear your passion and to hear to vocalizing some things that honestly is hard for a lot of pastors to vocalize to their leaders and to maybe people in their staff. And so to have an advocate come in like yourself to speak on some of these things, it's refreshing. So thank you. But in quick summary, just for the sake of resources, we do offer scholarships for counseling, scholarships for seminary. We do cohorts, we do workshops of various kinds, not just for ministry leaders, pastors per se, but also for members and conferences and things, because we want to resource in a lot of different settings, a lot of different avenues, people and churches in Queens, because we think, I personally think that Queens has a lot to offer. And we do, as you mentioned, send a lot of our training outside of Queens to get some of it. And we feel like we have the ability and we have the resources to kind of produce some of those very contextual type training and resources as well. And so, So speaking of that, thinking about the future, a little bit of where we're going. If we begin to think about the future and where we've been a little bit and where we feel like God's taken us, and you were talking to a pastor who maybe you encountered on the street. You get to meet somebody, which I met a guy this morning in the roastery. Shout out to Elm Roastery. I met a guy in the roastery this morning who had just this really cool hoodie on. And I was like, hey, man, where'd you get that hoodie? And we just got to talking. He was just telling me recently he came to know Christ and whatever. Yesterday, I was having a conversation with a pastor I met for the first time, and I was telling him about Queens Connexus. So imagine you're in a setting where you maybe encounter someone and you're wanting to tell them about Queens Connexus and come be a part of it, why? What are some reasons about where we're going as an organization that someone new might want to be a part of? Where are we going? What's going on? Why are you excited about the future? That's another way to ask the question.
I'm excited about the future because I feel like Queens Connexus starts not with a plan, and then we don't try to fit people into an existing plan. We try to listen to where people are, what the needs are, and then build around that. And so if someone new is thinking about Connexus, I would say, come, because we want to actually hear what you're going through, what challenges you're facing. And then our board is very responsive to that.
Yeah.
And so they have the chance to speak into the direction of Connexus. Connexus is, it's very focused on our neighborhood, our borough. And so if there's a ministry leader in Queens and they're going through something, they're going to be heard here, and what we build out, it's going to meet them.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. We're in our first year with church planting residents.
That's right.
We're excited about that. We have 3 this year.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we think about the future and where we're going we say we're a fellowship that is collaborating together for the sake of seeing God's kingdom grow. Obviously, we put a lot of emphasis on church planting, and so grateful to see future church plants that will come out of the relationship in the community, partnerships that come out of that relationship, and see church planters trained as we continue to build out those resources. We have church planting grants as well. I forgot we didn't mention that in the resources. Yeah. I'm just so grateful for a lot of the resources that Queens Connexus offered. And again, I'm someone who came into Queens Connexus, didn't start this to be able to, to brag on Queens Connexus, and it's not really my thing. It's hard to brag on something you start sometimes. Maybe not, but for me it is.
Well,
but
Jonathan,
I'm
you're also the one who started this residency program, so you're the one that's leading.
Fair enough, but I'm just saying. But there was a vision that the board had, and I was able to help, come be a part of. But the point is I'm just really grateful for all that's going on and kind of where we're going. One of the things we've mentioned on this that I want to encourage, if you're a ministry leader listening to this, one of our visions and dreams going forward is we want this to continue to be a place that is safe for pastors. Yeah. We had a conversation this morning in our Devo just about vulnerability, and sometimes it's difficult for pastors to be fully authentic and vulnerable within their own churches. But having a place where they can come together and be fully vulnerable and safe is kind of something we're grateful for.
Yeah.
Looking forward to, and want that to be a safe place. Yeah.
I think it's important to even add that in these places we use I language, and again we're learning this from Redeemer, and just even just within any kind of relationships, you would stay away from I don't know, you and we. I think if you could be very personal and I feel and I think that's a very already disarming sentence that you start with, and this way the entire group is oh, this is safe. Yeah. I'm not here to be preached at, especially at a group full of pastors. That's a natural thing y'all do. So
we do. We preach. It's what we know to do.
Yeah,
right.
And it's what you're really good at.
Yep.
But this is not the place for it. So it's almost we'll leave that at the door. Here is where we're actually getting to know each other, a little bit more.
Yeah, we say that often. Is you guys preach every Sunday. We don't need you preaching in here.
That's right.
And
that's right. Yeah.
we get enough of that.
I was thinking about what you were saying, even with the resourcing with the cohorts that we did. Mm-hmm. All of that was your vision was long-term health of the ministry leader, long-term health of the church that runs alongside the ministry leader. That's true. So many of us run alone, and we need teams. And so, we resourced the teams so that they would be in a place to run alongside the ministry leader.
And not just the ministry leader.
Yeah.
Right. And then on top of that, it was practically, what can we give them right now so that they can get there? Can you say more about what are some immediate resources that we provide?
Well, I guess when that happened, we're well, get your asses to counseling. You're a pastor, go to counseling. We're sending you. So it was
and it was resources specifically for them to go to counseling.
It was literally here is, and then we brought in people into our Wednesday devotionals, and so this way there was an intro. So this way people who are not used to counseling or therapy, it's not they're not shocked, But we did a very like a 1-day workshop, and then they came into our devotional. So this is where you're easing the church planters into this mindset of counseling. And then immediately it was like, well, let's just go. Like, you want to try this out? We have the funds for you, the scholarship and the funding, the funding into getting counseling, personal counseling. Yeah. You know, so that was very immediate. And then when people tried it, then all of a sudden there was we did like a fellows thing with everyone, and that was really cool.
What's a fellows thing?
The fellows thing was basically a Redeemer. They came in and did like a 9-month program. And majority of that class that was held here in Elmhurst, which has never been done before, was really good because it taught them how to counsel other people. At the same time, they're looking at themselves.
But who is them? The ministry leaders? With people in churches?
The ministry
who
leaders.
was RCAS fellows teaching?
Yeah, so they were teaching our church planters
Got
here
it.
from
Okay.
QCX, Queens Connexus. Yeah, so that was really cool. And I think it was so cool that we were able to do that, not just for like the same denomination people.
Yeah.
You know, it was just our group here is, I mean, even here, like, you know, we talk, it's just, there's different
Some of us are right,
denominations.
as Baptists, and some of us
Are more right.
as Presbyterians.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, that's just one of our third, you know, the cross-pollinating. I guess, Dave would probably know more about this.
Yeah. The cross-pollinating is really adjacent to our interdenominational fellowship. We say interdenominational because to differentiate it from being just multi-denominational. Multi-denominational, you can have people just from different denominations in the same room, and they're just siloed off, you know.
Right.
But with cross-pollinating, what we wanted was for our denominations for people from different denominations to learn from each other. You know, like, why do you guys emphasize that? You know, what's the value there? What's the approach there? And so for us to learn from each other in that way. Cross-pollinating is really the birth of that. It gets birthed out of that, where, a lot of times we get stuck in what we're doing. You know, everyone else in our denomination is doing the same thing.
Yeah.
There's nothing new.
Right.
Where do you get innovation from? Well, a lot of that's in dialogue with people who are doing it slightly different. What's great about Queens Connexus is we have a very specified boundary line for the ministries that are within it. And so it's like all of us are in the same geographic context, but all of us have different ministry approaches.
Yep.
And so we can learn from each other in that you are trying to love the same neighbors that I'm trying to love, but your approach is different. I want to learn, why it's different and what I can gain from that. And usually people ask you the same. And so you learn from each other.
Yeah, and also with the cross-pollinating, I know for myself, as being a part of a network within our denomination, that the network is the entire New York City metro. And so when we have network gatherings, they may be in Manhattan, they may be somewhere else. And I'm grateful that I get to meet with guys that are in Jersey or Connecticut or in Manhattan. But the reality is I'm not doing life with those guys. And so one of the beauties also of Queens Connexus with the cross-pollinating is not just we learn from each other, but the reality is what brings us together is not specifically our denomination, but says that, hey, we're all about Queens and we're all in this geography together and we can do life together. And so it fosters what brings us together is not as much some of our theological specific denominational bents or even the methodology, but just recognizing like, hey, we are in the same community and I may not have anybody else from my denomination that's near me. So am I alone? Well, no, because we're able to come together and we're able to cross those denominational lines to be able to be there for one another relationally as well. And so for me, it's a huge thing because I'm grateful. I'm grateful for that relationship because some of my best friends are not Baptists yet. I keep, it may never happen. You probably convinced me the other way before, anyways. But nonetheless, now I'm trying. So that's one of our values of cross-pollinating. Yeah. Well, gentlemen, just thank you for having the vision for Queens Connexus. Just kind of as putting my wrap-up thoughts on it on Queens Connexus in this community. I've said this to you guys many times, but it has been a lifeline for myself and my ministry and for my family. It took New York from being a place where God's called us, a place we love, to a place that was really home for us because because through the relationships at Queens Connexus, I would be able to say, I really have family here. And that's not to say anything against my church, because I have great friends at my church too. Absolutely. But to have other pastors that have become friends and become brothers and sisters relationally that connected with, it has allowed New York to be home in a way that it wasn't before. Yeah. And so just thank you for having the vision. Thank you for giving of yourselves and birthing this, and God using it in valuable ways in my life, and I know in others. And so just thanks.
Thanks,
guys.
Jonathan.
Yeah. Well, if you're interested at all in Queens Connexus, you can check us out at queensconnexus.org. We pray that you continue to stay tuned for further resources, and that God would use you to advance his kingdom, to bring him honor and glory here in the city that we love.